welcome to the press conference for Anemone, and a very warm welcome to our two distinguished guests. One that we are really, really proud to see him return to acting and to Athens, Mr. Daniel Ντέι-Λιούις. And one very, very talented young director who's here with his auspicious debut, Mr. Rόναν Ντέι-Λιούις.
Thank you.
Of course, we have with us a true lady, Mrs. Daphne Οικονόμου, who is the president of the Cerebral Palsy Center.
Φυσικά έχουμε μαζί μας και μια σπουδαία πραγματική κυρία, την κυρία Δάφνη Οικονόμου, η οποία είναι η ιδρύτρια και πρόεδρος του Ανοιχτή Πόρτα.
And we're very happy to have you here with us again. I would like to ask the first question to our youngest member of the panel, to Ronan, and to say this. Usually, as film critics, whenever we see a film, we tend to make comparisons with other films. We say that this resembles the work of that director, or it's like this film. With your film, there seems to be no precedent. It's like a unique kind of film, a unique kind of vision. And we can't really compare it to any other film. And that's probably one of the many compliments I have to give you for the film.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But I was wondering, if is this something that it was a culmination of your working with Daniel on the screenplay, or was that your own directorial choice and view?
It was really kind of an unconscious combination of the two, I would say, in the end. Like a lot of those decisions kind of grew early on as the script was developing in terms of some of those departures from reality or from a version of reality that we're kind of used to being depicted. And then a lot of it was also to do with the painting. I'm a painter as well, so a lot of the work I've been doing in painting, I think, for the last few years up to making the film informed a lot of the kind of choices in the visual language, which I think contributed to that. But yeah, so I think it's really kind of a combination of both.
Want to comment on that, Daniel? Want to add something?
I think Ronan put it in a nutshell. I don't want to.
Well, you know that, and I do speak on behalf of the whole room, that we really, really missed you, and we are glad to have you back. This means that there will be no question about your so-called retirement. You've answered those questions before. But my question is, was it something that you missed from the whole process and your absence from the craft during those 7-year hiatus?
Yes, the work has always been a source of great nourishment to me, and of course, spending time away from that, certainly there are many things that I missed about it. The way of life around it is something that I've never really grown accustomed to. And I was like that as a student, and had sort of concerns about whether I was well suited for that life. And then was lucky enough to make my way as an actor. And so I tried to grow into some sort of understanding of the cycle of the work and the public life, and how those two things were an integral part of each other. But there have been times in my life, and one of them was 8 years ago, when that question that hung over me just took on a greater weight, and I just thought I just still haven't found a way of dealing with the public aspects of it.
Yeah. I have to remind you that the purpose of our being here today and of the screening that will follow afterwards is noble. We're here to support the work of the Cerebral Palsy Center, the Open Door, and the constant support of this lady, Mrs. Οικονόμου, who for the past 53 years has been trying to help children. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it 53 years, Mrs. Οικονόμου? I would like you to say a few words, because 53 years is a long time, and this is a very, very noble cause.
Yes, it is. It is 53 years now since the time when we founded a very small center for children with cerebral palsy, because there was nothing for them at all in Greece. And something which I think is relevant to what is happening today is that we discovered that children in those days were never given the opportunity to play. They did physiotherapy, they did all sorts of rather tiring and boring things for themselves, and they never played, and they never did anything artistic. They never painted or danced or sang. So the very first thing that we put into our work was play and music and dancing and singing and painting, and and we discovered that this was the best way of all for our children to develop and to find ways to express themselves. And this is continued right up to today. But I would like to speak today about the connection with Daniel. Daniel, nobody can ever doubt Daniel's enormous talent as an actor, but he has another enormous talent, and that is for friendship. Daniel is the most wonderful friend, and we have been friends for many, many years, and it is a friendship that has lasted through thick and thin and over. I mean, we are not together except every 3 years, every 4 years, and yet we love each other, and Daniel loves our children, and this is the reason why he's here. And this is the most precious thing for us, that this is a friendship that has lasted all these years. It's a genuine friendship, and it means a lot to us, and I think it means a lot to Daniel too. So this is why he's here, actually, and this is why you're here, and this is why we are all here, to support the children of the Open Door Center, because they are worth everything. They are worth everything. And this is what we are all doing together today. And this is the opportunity to thank the universal people here and in America, and the festival people here and perhaps elsewhere too, for a wonderful cooperation to put all this together. Because Daniel says, I will come, and we know that this is true, but it means also that we've got to get all this together. And there was a wonderful cooperation all this time, so that we are here today. And we call it D-Day, and it has two meanings. It's D-Day in the original sense, and it's Daniel Day too. So there we are. And that's enough from me. Thank you.
And of course, I should remind you that the very first visit Mr. Daniel Ντέι-Λιούις had in Athens was in 1989, right before winning the Academy Award for My Left Foot. Is that correct?
I think, yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not my first visit to Greece, but it was my first visit in relation to the Open Door.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, time for your questions. So you raise your hand, and a question from Mr. Theodore Kouchoulis.
Hello, hi, and welcome. A question for both father and son, director and actor. We would love for you to tell us that there was a magical moment when Ronan said, Dad, would you star in my movie? And Dad said, yes, but I suppose that it was a long process.
No, that never happened.
We-
But what did happen was I put it to Ronan. I knowing that I was no longer in the arena doing this work, I felt a real sadness at the thought that Ronan was going on to make films. I wasn't going to be a part of that, and we've worked together on numerous things over the years, and just in the purest sense, for the sake of it, I wanted to find a way of working together, and Ronan felt the same thing, and by coincidence, we both had set our sights a little bit. We had a sort of shared fascination for brotherhood, probably in my case more as an observer. I have 3 sons, and Ronan as a participant in the cut and thrust of brotherly relations, for better and worse. And so that's really how it began. And we thought we would just try to write something that we could perhaps contain in such a way that it wouldn't involve all the massive paraphernalia of a big production. But we didn't manage that. We came up with something else that if we were to go to the next stage, to start to try to get the thing produced, we knew that it was going to be a full-on production.
Yeah, no, it's hard to add much to that. That was, and it as we, I think there was a moment, because at first when we started writing the script, it was very low stakes and playful, and kind of, we didn't go in with an outline or anything, or any kind of idea of where, we had a vague sense of where the story was taking us, but we basically just had these characters in this scenario, in this kind of environment together, and for a long time, we would only write when we were in the same place, so it would come together these very kind of sporadic drips and drabs. And then at a certain point, I think we realized we had maybe like 70 pages, like close to a full first draft, and that was definitely close to that, I guess, moment that you're talking about, where we realized that it was real, and that it was something that we felt worked in this form, and was something that we were both obsessed with enough that we wanted to kind of follow into this world. So that was, I think, an exciting and terrifying moment for both of us, yeah.
But it's at the same time, it's a strange collision between fiction and reality, because in both fiction and reality, a father returns for the sake of the son. I mean, both in the film and, in your own reality. I don't know if that was purely subconscious, something that you haven't thought of while you were making the film.
Well, I definitely don't see our experience as me returning in any way to help my son. I mean, I think it was a kind of it was an entirely mutual experience, with a kind of equal wish on both of us, on both of our parts. And I think probably invariably, when you work, in most creative work, the vast majority of that work takes place at an unconscious level. And I've no doubt that elements of our personal explorations of father and son relationships, brother relationships, that I think that finds its way into the work in spite of you. But we didn't set out in any way to...
Yeah, no, as he was saying, I think the brotherhood seed was the first thing in our kind of way in, and then it did kind of creep up on us, just that thread of the father and the son, and particularly I think the mystery of the son's kind of fascination with the mystery of the father's past life, or the parents' kind of past life, which felt like something that I could find like a personal way into, even though the film was so far from like autobiographical for either of us, but yeah.
Sure.
In a recent interview, I think it was on CBS, you referred to the method, the acting method, and you said something like that it has become an easy target, mostly by people who don't know much, and that it has become synonymous for an actor to be in a lunatic state, or even with a self-flagellation. I would like a bit more a comment on that. And there is a second part. Your way of working has become, through the years, legendary, even mythical. Your extreme devotion, your preparation, your research, the fact that you stay in character for a long period of time during the whole time of shootings. So what was it this time? And maybe for Ronan, if the fact that his comeback is such a big fuss, did that frustrate you? Was that a pressure for you? Thank you.
Well, that's a lot of question to answer. In terms of, I think I blew off some steam during that interview because it does, I mean, I'm aware of how the world turns, and over the years during which I wasn't working, I've noticed more and more that the method has seemed to become almost a kind of like an object of ridicule. And certainly the implication is that people that work within that system, if they choose to, are just a bloody nuisance on the set by virtue of the fact that they're working in that way. And so I do believe it's mostly been, most of the commentary has been from people that really have no understanding whatsoever of what that work involves. I've never chosen to talk about it. I don't find it interesting to talk about. I see no sense in talking about it. But there's no shortage of people that will talk about it on my behalf. And probably a lot of the stuff that, that I've been, has been attributed to me over the years has been kind of pure fantasy on some people's parts. But, when you go to have any chance of success in making a film, you're working with a group of people, and both sides of the camera. You need to be able to collaborate with those people fully. And if your system of work, no matter what it is, Method, Meisner, or Stanislavski, whatever it might be, if that in some way impedes the work of other people, you're making a mistake. You've gone wrong. And if that has been a result or a byproduct of the work over the years, then I hate to think that it might have been in my case, but maybe some people did find it difficult. I don't know, but I like to believe that it's really just a personal, private way of approaching the moment when you encounter all these different people on the set. And in terms of working with actors, I don't need to know where they're coming from. I just need to feel there's a human being in front of me, listening, speaking, reacting, and I hope that, through my choice of my way of working, that I'm able to give that to them. And there's no real question beyond that. But yeah, it seems to have gained a reputation over the years of just, extreme behavior and people being just a nuisance on the set. So you better start talking now.
So just to recap, you were wondering about just the sense of pressure of his return. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a pretty big pressure. But I think the equal pressure for me was that his working experience was pleasurable, was like enjoyable, because since it's my first film, and I have more experience with the kind of visual aspects of it than with working with actors. I was definitely worried that would be, I was definitely, it was one of my main concerns going in, that he had a good working experience. And I think it helped that we had written the script together, that we had so many opportunities to discuss the character and all these kind of individual moments in his trajectory emotionally in such detail while we were writing, that by the time we got to set, it was very, like, you could almost be in denial of the pressure, because it felt like such a kind of intimate, flow state that we were in. So that was definitely a gift. But yeah, there's definitely no getting around the pressure.
I should nevertheless add that Paul Thomas Anderson once said that this is kind of a blessing for the director, Because when you go on set and you do not work with the actor, but you work with the character directly, this is a great help to the director, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's what's interesting about, you know, what he was saying about people, you know, potentially finding it difficult to work with someone who's embedded in that way. I actually found it the opposite, that it creates it kind of shrinks the gap between the reality outside of the set and the reality in the world that you're working in. So there's so much less of a leap of imagination needed when you're actually finding those scenes and finding those moments together.
I mean, I suppose the business that we're in, obviously, is creating an illusion of some kind. And, you know, we go to some lengths to build the world that we're searching for in every department, be it the greens department, the design department, the actors, the director. Everybody is helping to create another world. And I suppose it seems obvious to say it, but when you go to such lengths to find that other reality, for me, the main process is creating the illusion for myself and hoping that if it's strong enough in me, that other people might recognize that and accept it. But when you go to such lengths to create that world, for me, it seems perfectly natural to want to stay in it for a period of time. And I mean, God bless people that want to jump in and out of that, and it works well for them. But you know, our fascination very often takes us into a place that we want to spend time in. And so this idea of staying in character, it has a kind of specious mystery to it. But to me, it just seems like a continuation of the joy of exploring the world that you've created.
Were there any fatherly instincts that you had to separate in the work in progress with Ronan? Did you feel you had to protect him from mistakes or, you know, with your experience?
Not mistakes is a good question, but I think I kidded myself going into it. I thought, well, it's Ronan's first film. I know my way around this a bit, and so I will perhaps be able to protect him from certain things. But I mean, the opposite was really true, because, you know, Ronan's self-determination was the most important aspect of this. And, you know, if things didn't look right to me in any other circumstance with a first-time director, I might have strolled over and had a quiet word with somebody. But in Ronan's case, he just needed to do that himself. So if anything, I was far less able to offer any kind of protection than another person might have been. But he didn't need it anyway.
Hello, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
For other reasons. So, Ronan, how difficult or strange or peculiar or whatever was for you to direct your father?
Yeah, it was, I think the first day when we got to set, there was definitely a transitional moment where it was pretty surreal to suddenly be in that situation together. But I think, yeah, like I said, the process of having written the script together was kind of a gift because we basically got to prepare for 4 years together. So it was, which is pretty rare, I think. So by the time we got to set, I think once we found our feet and found our rhythm, it felt weirdly normal, like pretty quickly. Like I think we were able to find a kind of shorthand, and a lot of what needed to be said had already been said. So it took some pressure off the actual day-to-day, you know, pressure, the day-to-day reality of the shoot. And we didn't rehearse much, but like we would kind of walk every evening. We'd walk through the scenes for the following day in the space together and kind of figure out, you know, based on a mixture of like how I had envisioned shooting it, but then also just how my dad was responding to the space and how the character would kind of move through the space. We would sort of figure out those things in a pretty intuitive way. So it was, yeah, it felt very intuitive.
Hello, thank you for being once more here. The question is actually for both of you. Let's say you collaborated script-wise and you chose to put the background in Ireland and in the Ireland War, in the Irish War. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we had my dad had connections to Ireland for a long time. He had been living in Ireland before he actually met my mother. So yeah, he had a long time connection to the country, and I grew up in Ireland partially fully for 6 years, from like 7 to 13. So I had learned about the Troubles in school there, and they had really loomed large in my mind and my imagination for a long time. And so when we first discovered the character of Ray, this guy living in this state of kind of self-banishment, we knew that he had been involved in a conflict of some kind, but we weren't sure exactly what that was at first. And I think we both pretty unconsciously were drawn towards the Troubles for those reasons. And we ended up, I think, the fact that Ray was Northern English came to us before we knew that the Troubles were actually the backdrop of it. But I think as we went further into that, it became interesting to us to explore that from that different perspective, but also making sure that the perspective of the film was not interwoven with the perspective of the oppressor. So it was definitely a different angle to approach that conflict than I think it has been done a lot of times before.
But over the years, I'd spent a lot of time in Belfast during the Troubles, at the height of the Troubles. Stayed in West Belfast, which is a Catholic area of the city, and all my previous world had been from the point of view of the Catholic Irish experience, and so that in itself, I think, it made it was interesting to us to attempt to discover a different point of view, of young British soldiers in that conflict. Initially, the first few drafts of the script, it was a set. We'd written a sequence that was set during the Falklands conflict, the Malvinas War. But because largely, well, for a number of different reasons, we settled fairly quickly on the Troubles as being the better experience for those two brothers. Yeah.
This is a very interesting, the interesting thing about you working on the screenplay together was that this was a sort of dialogue between two different generations on timely subjects, but on subjects that maybe Ronan was not aware of, but he was more than eager to find more about it while he was working on the screenplay, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think that, like, having learned about it in Ireland growing up, as I had going into working on the script, I didn't have a extremely detailed understanding of it, but in a way that also became part of the exploration of Brian's perspective in the story, as with that tapestry of drawings in the beginning, and as we kind of go into his bedroom and understand this kind of shrapnel of generational trauma that's kind of rippled through this family from the perspective of someone who's looking at it almost from a naive perspective that he has. So, but yeah, and then learning more about it also in detail as we worked on the script felt important. Yeah.
Question over there.
Hello, thank you for being here. My question is for Mr. Daniel Day-Lιούις. I wanted to ask you if there were any pieces of you that you gave or lent to Ray, and in return, if there were any pieces of him that stayed with you for a while. Thank you.
Yeah, I've no doubt both those things are true, but I'd be the last person to be able to separate them out in any way. I mean, I always, when I'm working, I think I always feel, again, it's part of that illusion that one is creating for oneself, but the illusion for me has almost invariably been working in search of a life that seems very far from my own, and in pretty much every aspect of Ray's experience. Ray, really, there's no points of connection. At the same time, though, you know, finally, the only thing you have to give, no matter who that character ends up being or how extremely different it might appear to be from your own experience, the life can only really be nourished by your own life and your own experience, and so I think you just trust that will find its way through. But I never really sought to question it or look at it objectively in any way. It has been suggested that I have it in common with Ray that I'm a hermit, and I'm not a hermit. You know, the phrases that you see, you know, kind of tabloid phrases of breaks cover, breaks silence, so on. But I don't live undercover. I just don't live in the eye of a lens all the time. And I don't break silence. I'm just not talking into a microphone all the time. I'm talking to friends and family and colleagues and so on. And you know, I live quietly, but I'm not a recluse. I'm not a cave dweller.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you again. I was wondering if this movie is just an exception, or if the revisit make you rethink about coming back for, you know, as a visitor, not as a permanent actor. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really hard because we're still, you know, this is the beginning of the life of the film, where we're somehow separating ourselves from it and handing it over, and but we're still so connected to it. We still feel so inside of this. It's very hard to imagine what will happen when, you know, beyond that. But I certainly wouldn't discount working again. It's very hard to have a sort of generalized wish to do that work, because always in my life that work has been in response to a very particular fascination that arises from goodness knows where. This experience working with Ronan has been obviously unique for me, and a very joyful one. It reminded me of everything that I loved about this work when I started out, and I felt that was something that we shared with our colleagues, that many of whom had huge amounts of experience accumulatively between them, but I think the sense of it was that we were going back to a way of working that we'd started out with, where it seems like an obvious thing, but where everyone is working towards the same end with goodwill, and but that's not always true in filmmaking. Filmmaking can get bogged down with the weight of the machinery that's necessary to do it, and in this case, it felt like a pure enterprise, and that was a happy experience. And when you have a happy experience, you're always hoping to repeat it one way or another. Yeah.
Well, before wishing you all a nice D-Day, to quote Mrs. Economou, a nice DNR Day, to quote myself, I have to tell you this. We will continue this conversation tonight after the screening of the film. You should know that the beautiful Megaron venue is full. It's a full house for tonight's screening. 1,500 people will get to see Anemone at its international premiere. And I should thank for that, not only the support of all those who were more than willing to buy the ticket to support the cause, but also to Mrs. Economou, Open Door, the Cerebral Palsy Center, Tanwer Universal for the help, and of course the Athens International Film Festival. On our behalf, we thank you all very much, and we wish you a nice Sunday. And of course, not to forget the most important thing, excuse me, we should thank those two gentlemen for being here with us today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having me.
And Ms. Economo, of course.
I should definitely just add to that, that it's easy for me to say, let's do a benefit screening for the Open Door Centre. But in this case, you know, we would have figured it out one way or another, but we're so grateful to thank you for folding us into the festival. And it's just lovely to have that combination of experiences for us.
Thank you so much for saying that. But what's lovely to us as well as a festival is that we get to introduce a new talent. And this is very, very important for us. I'm talking about Ronan. So thank you so much. And thank Mrs. Economo. Let's give you the last word.
That's exactly what I wanted to say, to begin by thanking Daniel and Ronan for being here, because that's the most important thing of all. But to thank everybody who have worked to get us all here today. And I would like to particularly mention people from the Open Door Centre who have been working night and day to get everything organized. And I'm sure it's going to be a great success. And I loved what Daniel said about illusion, that this wonderful work that they do is opening up a world of illusion. And that opens up such a wide and wonderful world for us all in this very difficult time that we are all living in. So we are doubly grateful. Thank you.
On that elegant note, Ronan, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having us here at this wonderful festival, and to Daphne for letting us participate in the center. It's really such a privilege to be here with you all.
On that note, you all have a beautiful Sunday. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.